As Russia advances on its enemy, a warning these attacks could soon stretch beyond Ukraine's borders.
We are Russia's next target.
NATO chief Mark Rutte urging allies to step up coordination against Russian aggression, suggesting the threat of a world war is as close as ever.
Russia has brought war back to Europe, and we must be prepared for the scale of war our grandparents and great-grandparents endured.
The process to peace is only inching closer. Volodymyr Zelensky met with US officials who he says want Ukraine to withdraw entirely from the Donbass region. That area would be demilitarised as a free economic zone. The Ukrainian leader wants assurances Russia won't take over, with any territorial concessions to be approved in a referendum and backed by robust security guarantees, including from Australia.
And we underlined it impossible without Europe and all members of our coalition of the willing, from Canada to Japan, Australia and New Zealand.
The updated 20-point plan now rests with Donald Trump before it even gets to Moscow, with word of an understanding on the agreement by Christmas.
It's, a little bit complicated because you're cutting up land in a certain way. It's not the easiest thing. It's sort of like a complex real estate deal times 1,000.
Unlikely the gift of peace is near. In London, Jacqueline Robson, 7 News.
We are Russia's next target. And we are already in harm's way. NATO would have to substantially increase its military presence along the eastern flank. China is Russia's lifeline. China wants to prevent its ally from losing in Ukraine. We are Russia's next target. And we are already in harm's way. And how is Putin able to continue his war against Ukraine? The answer is China. So far, Putin has only played the peacemaker when it suits him, to buy time to continue his war. President Trump wants to end the bloodshed now. We are Russia's next target. And we are already in harm's way. NATO would have to substantially increase its military presence along the eastern flank. China is Russia's lifeline. China wants to prevent its ally from losing in Ukraine.
The goals of the special military operation will undoubtedly be achieved. We would prefer to do this and address the root causes of the conflict through diplomacy. If the opposing side and their foreign patrons refuse to engage in substantive discussions, Russia will achieve the liberation of its historical lands by military means. The task of creating and expanding a security buffer zone will also be consistently addressed.
Mr. Joachim Bitterlich is a former German ambassador to NATO and former European diplomatic and security advisor to German Chancellor Helmut Kohl. He's now joining us live on this broadcast. Ambassador, thank you very much for your time. President Putin has warned Europe of consequences if the bloc decides to send troops to Ukraine. Your thoughts?
Well, we are near the hardcore of the real negotiations between Washington and Moscow. Because this idea to send in a multinational, or call it a European force, with US support that could assist in the regeneration of Ukrainian forces, in securing Ukrainian skies, in supporting safer seas, including through operating inside Ukraine. It's not a new proposal, it's a proposal that has been launched by President Macron and British Prime Minister some weeks before. I think the Americans have accepted it, and for the Russians this is one of, let's call it, the worst cases. And the Russians see this case, even as I make my interpretation from what the Russians are telling, it's even worse than NATO to some extent. And therefore, let's see, is this the last word of the Russians or not? I've doubts whether it would be even at the end acceptable to the Russians, but perhaps this could be help to get other, let's say, lines of compromise or other concessions from the Russian side. Perhaps, let's see.
Ambassador, Ambassador, let's talk about the peace plan now, because Trump appears to suggest that in exchange for security guarantees, Ukraine must agree to give Russia the parts of the eastern Donbas region that Kiev still holds, something that President Zelensky has previously ruled out. How do you think that will play out in the long run? Very quickly.
Let's see. I don't think that any side has given its last word on this question. I understand to some extent Zelensky's answer. He needs sort of a referendum in order to give in on this side. And the Russians have annexed these sides of Ukraine. What's for me, it's out of any, let's say, disinformation war between the two sides is the Crimea. And I think perhaps the Crimea could be helpful to find a solution, to find, let's say, the intermediate one with regard to the Donbas. Let's see.
All right, let's see. Ambassador Bitterlich, it's good to see you. Thank you very much for talking to us today.
Pleasure as always.
You know, a thing like that, as you probably know, because you are a professional, a real professional, which is something I don't say about a lot of other people, but you are a great professional. Things like this end up in third world wars. And I told that the other day. I said, you know, everybody keeps playing games like this. You'll end up in a third world war, and we don't want to see that happen.
Ukrainian Air Force units have struck Novoshakhtinsk oil products refinery in Russia's Rostov region using Storm Shadow air-launched cruise missiles, the General Staff of Ukraine's armed forces reported on December 25. According to the agency, multiple explosions were observed, the target was hit, and the extent of the damage is currently being assessed. The Novoshakhtinsk facility is among the largest petroleum product suppliers in southern Russia and plays a direct role in supporting the Russian armed forces, providing diesel fuel and aviation kerosene to troops. The plant's total storage capacity exceeds 210,000 cubic meters. Earlier, Ukraine's Security Service, SBU, that Ukrainian long-range drones hit oil product tanks in the Russian port of Temryuk and a gas processing plant in Russia's Orenburg region. The SBU continues to target facilities in the Russian oil and gas sector systematically. Each of these strikes hits the Russian budget, reduces foreign currency revenues, and complicates logistics and fuel supplies for the army, a source within the SBU said. According to the source, the first target was the seaport of Temryuk in Russia's Krasnodar region. 2 tanks containing petroleum products are on fire there. Subsequently, drones struck the Orenburg gas processing plant, which is the world's largest gas chemical complex, processing 37.5 billion cubic meters of gas per year. It should be noted that Ukraine has scaled up attacks on Russia's strategic military and energy facilities in occupied parts of Ukraine and deep in Russia.
Recently, it was announced that Lieutenant General Sukhram Akhmedov, a hero of Russia, known for his love of meat assaults, has returned to the front. This was welcome news for the Ukrainian armed forces, as the officer quickly assembled a column of armored vehicles from the Russian Pacific Fleet Marines in the Pokrovsk sector and launched the attack. According to Z-blogger Vladimir Romanov, the failed attack resulted in the destruction of 6 tanks, 9 infantry fighting vehicles, 5 armored personnel carriers, 1 armored recovery vehicle, and 10 ATVs. Journalist Yuri Butusov drew attention to Romanov's complaints by publishing a video of the destruction on his Telegram channel. Romanov noted that one of the reasons for the defeat of the Marine occupiers near Pokrovsk was that their radar systems were working in the wrong direction or were not working at all. Thanks to the hero Akhmedov. Come again, Butusov urged. Recall the head of Russia's Republic of Dagestan announced on June the 10th that Lieutenant General Sukhram Akhmedov was awarded the title Hero of Russia. Lieutenant General Akhmedov, a native of the Republic, is known for commanding units that suffered heavy and largely avoidable losses over the course of Russia's full-scale war in Ukraine. In 2023, Akhmedov was promoted twice, to Major General in February and to Lieutenant General in December. Dagestan head Sergei Melnikov noted that Akhmedov had distinguished himself particularly on the Kursk front. In November 2022, Marines from the 155th Brigade of Russia's Pacific Fleet, which was under Akhmedov's command at the time, complained to the governor of Primorsky Krai about heavy losses suffered near Pavlivka, close to Volodar in Ukraine's Donetsk region. They claimed that due to the incompetent actions of the command, the unit head lost 300 men in just 4 days of offensive operations. In June 2023, Akhmedov's name was mentioned by pro-war bloggers in connection with an incident near Kremina, where Russian soldiers were left standing on a parade ground for 2 hours awaiting their commander, and came under fire from a HIMARS strike. According to Ukrainian OSINT groups, the strike targeted the 144th Motor Rifle Division of the 20th Army, commanded by Akhmedov. Approximately 100 soldiers were killed. At the end of March 2024, Russian serviceman Svyatoslav Golikov voiced frustration over the situation on the Lyman section of the front near Terny, claiming that Russia's 20th Army, still under Akhmedov's command, was being slaughtered. Golikov referred to Akhmedov as the butcher, calling for him to be stripped of his military rank and sent to serve in an assault unit. In May 2024, Akhmedov was dismissed from his post as commander of the 20th Army. No official explanation was given for his removal, but it came amid a sweeping reshuffle in the Ministry of Defense following the appointment of Andrei Belousov as defense minister.
Sons and daughters, colleagues, veterans will all have a part to play, to build, to serve, and if necessary, to fight. And more families will know what sacrifice for our nation means. That's why it's so important that we do explain the changing threat and the need to stay ahead of it. While I've argued that Russia's campaign in Ukraine has so far been a strategic failure, with NATO bigger, more united, stronger, and spending increased amounts on rearmament, we should be under no illusions that Russia has a massive, increasingly technically sophisticated, and now highly combat experienced military. War is enormously costly. And I know I don't need to tell this audience that while the price of peace may be rising, the cost of strong deterrence is still far, far less than the cost of war.